bit about myself. I am originally from Hong Kong. Anybody from Hong Kong here? Leo? Yeah. And both my parents were first generation Christians. So basically, you know, they both came from a non-Christian family culture, and like it or not, me as a second generation is shaped by the family of origin. So I'll give you a brief example. My mother's birth mother died when she was 6, and she and 6 siblings overnight were sent into the home of the stepmother. Can you imagine? 13 siblings overnight just like that? Now, that has a huge impact on her. Looking back, as I do my work on my of awareness of my past, and that leads her to become a little bit insecure and keen to please. So it's hard to set boundaries when you're keen to please, yeah? Okay, so what did I grow up as? A bit insecure and keen to please, okay? So one of the things we're going to talk about a bit later is family of origin impact. Now, I'd like to share with you about 3 turning points in my life, 3. First turning point most of you here will be familiar with is when you met Christ Jesus as your Lord and Savior. I was 20-year-old. I was in OCF in Adelaide in Flinders University when I really encountered God. You know, when the Bible becomes real, the Holy Spirit become real, worship become real, everything become real, and you think, from now on I'm going to live for Jesus Christ. Yes? You're familiar with that, most of you. And in fact, that was about the time when I first visited this church as part of the OCF convention. All right, so I was blissfully unaware for probably 8 to 9 years about past influences upon me, unhealthy life patterns, emotional instability I carry. And I experienced God's call to ministry during medical school, and so I worked for 2 years as a doc, went to Bible college. That's when I met Pastor Mike, by the way. And it was during my time of studies there that I realized, hey, there's a whole lot of stuff that is missing inside me. And so I started receiving some Christian counseling. I started reading, let's see, I forgot about this. Am I supposed to do this now? This way? This way? No? Maybe just rest wrongly? Okay, great. No, that's not me. So that's OCF, not that convention, but another one. That was when I started doing some reading, as much as some good Christian counseling. These were some of the books that means a lot, including, just for you, you recognize that one? Boundries, when to say yes, when to say no, how to take control of your life. All right, it's not just boundaries. Boundaries is just one thing, all right? And so it gives me a way to manage myself, okay? So that second life-changing phase was, I've got to do some work inside, and I've got to be changed emotionally as much as grow spiritually, okay? After Bible college and a 6 months missionary assignment in Papua New Guinea, I started what is a lifelong pattern of being bivocational. So I was working as a doctor and serving in leadership in local church or parachurch pretty much since then. One of the first places I served in was where I met Serena. You might remember, in a little church up in the eastern suburbs, but I was serving as a GP obstetrician. In 2011, I married Mike, my classmate, and the next year God calls us to Point Cook. So for the last 10 years until end of last year, we spent our time and our energy in Point Cook, raising our daughter Annabelle, working as a part-time as a GP and serving in the church. My ministry is always voluntary, but in the recent years, I've been recognized as one of the associate pastors alongside Pastor Mike there. In addition, for 3 years, I was a board member of our denomination, so I've got quite a few hats. And I used to say this, I'm just burning candles on both ends. Some of you have done that before, but the candle doesn't last very long if you burn candles both ends. And life can be too busy. And tank, oh, you are just so exhausted, close to burnout. That word's come up. So that comes to the third turning point. The third turning point, if it points, doesn't point, that's right, you got it. No, how come that one and that one doesn't match? Okay, you just click, I think, forget about the clicking bit. Now just get back to the pictures. So the third turning point in our life was in 2019, about halfway into our 10 years ministry in Point Cook. We were given a copy of this book, and I do have all the books here, just in case you want to have a look. Okay, the Emotional Healthy Leaders book, which we took to summer holiday, and by that time we were enough aware about emotional issues. But Peter Scazzaro basically put to words what we couldn't quite fully understand, how to yet. We kind of understand it, but we couldn't put to word, which is emotional health and spiritual maturity are inseparable. You cannot grow spiritually well, even though you might know Jesus, encounter Jesus, be on fire for him, but really grow well as a person without growing emotionally also. All right? And one of the key chapters in these books, which are related books, is called Receiving the Gift of Limits, Boundries, Limits. And the book comes with questionnaires, like you can score some questionnaire, but not that one. And I still remember going, oh dear, we are scoring very low here as people who know how to accept our limits and draw boundaries. So we start to grow and change. And we start to do church differently. I still remember when we come up with this catchphrase for the church: rest, grow, go. And we tell people it is okay to rest. If you're tired after serving, you can take time off. You come to this church, you come from overseas, you don't have to serve right now. Rest and grow, because if we grow well, we will naturally want to go. But I think so often we put these three the other way around. We tell people it's good to serve, it's good to serve, but inside they're empty. Okay, so that was kind of a bit of an aha moment for us. But what I think for Mike and I both was most helpful was we led small group through the materials. Some of you, Jessie was part of my group at one point. So I led 4 or 5 of these emotional healthy ladies course, and we would just go through the coursework, go through the basics about limits, the basics about grieving, the basics about working on family of origin issues, and so on and so forth. And last year, Mike and I, knowing that we were leaving, we went through the Emotional Healthy Leaders curriculum with our pastoral team. And that kind of, every time we do this, it reinforced, what healthy boundaries, what healthy living looks like. So that's the background. I would say, some of you know that Mike and I stepped down after 10 years from Point Cook end of last year. I would say without these books changing our thinking, we probably wouldn't have the wisdom to say, okay, it's time to put a close to this season. Trust God for the next season, okay? And so, as you can see, this is a topic very close to my heart. First questionnaires, I might just get you to start distributing. So, the first thing we're going to do is, I hope you all have pens, or I should have asked for pens earlier, sorry. I've just got some questionnaire for you, very, very basic. Now, you don't have to share with anybody on your table anything that I've asked you to fill in. It is really a space for you to think about yourself. So the questions are very simple. Open exercise 1. Some of us, most active people in the church struggle with self-care. Imagine inside you are 4 tanks: the spiritual tank, the relational tank, the physical tank, the emotional tank. Everybody got this, or we haven't got? Is everybody with me? Those right at the back, are you with me? You hear me loud and clear? Okay. You need to take some time to score yourself. Do I give myself a 10 out of 10? Do I give myself a 5 out of 10? Do I give myself 2 out of 10, or am I on the verge of burnout 1 out of 10? So that's the first task. Once you've finished that, there are 2 different sets of revealing questions. It's like doctors asking you, to do a questionnaire to reveal how your health is. One set which is on awareness of healthy boundaries, and another set on respecting God-given limits. So I'm going to ask all of you to just have a look, start filling up. Now I will know you finish when you put down your pen and look up. All right? Until you put down there and look up, I'm assuming you are still doing this work. And no, nobody needs to share it with anybody. This is something you can go back to. It's not something you have to finish now. It's your paper. But it just kind of gives you a snapshot. It's like putting a mirror in front of you. How am I actually doing? Now, I suspect there will be some people here who score less than 5 out of 10 on some of these tests. And my challenge to you is, I hope by the end of today, you can find 1 or 2 things you will do, okay, I'm going to do this in order to pick up. Because the truth is, we cannot always stay less than 5 out of 10 without migrating the direction of burnout. Okay? Okay, I'm going to pause here and say, is there any question? Any clarification? No? Okay, now I need you to put your thinking cap on, and just to help you, because in the next few minutes I need you to think about what the Bible says about boundaries. Right? I'm sure it's not in any of those books, so you've got to put your thinking cap on. So, question number 1. Where in the Bible does the concept of boundaries originate from? There's no right wrong answer. Come on, give me an idea. Where? Yes? Janet, want chocolate? Yes?
Genesis, when God rested on the Sabbath after he made the world.
Okay, right. There you go. Chocolate for you, Janet. Yeah. I'm going to go through here, so anybody wants it, better answer them quite fast. Actually, you think about it, Genesis chapter 1 and 2 are all about boundaries, okay? If you want a Bible, there's a Bible somewhere there, if you need to check, but you think about it, in the beginning, there was what? Nothing. There was just nothing. And God was the one who set physical boundaries. Verse 4, God saw light was good, he separated light from darkness, yeah? Then he separated the sky and the, hang on, my eyesight is not very good. Then he separated the veil between the sky and the land. Then he separated the land and the water. Then there is the day and the night. They're all about boundaries. God set these boundaries for seasons. They are also God's boundaries. They are physical boundaries. And yes, that's right. Then God rested. He self-set boundaries. All right, I've done enough. This is good. In fact, this is very good, he said, when he created human being. Time to rest. Okay? Self-set boundaries. Okay? Chapter 2 is really interesting. Chapter 2 is when God set boundaries for us human beings. Yeah? Okay, yeah, thank you. So, chapter 2, verse 15 and 17. Look at this from the boundaries lens. God took the man, put him in the Garden of Eden to work it, to take care of it. So there's a physical boundaries. You to be in the Garden of Eden, there is a job description. Your job is to look after this place. Then there is a release clause. You are free to eat anything else, but not this. So that is boundary setting. There's nothing as clear a boundary setting as this. We do that with our kids, don't we? You can play, but you can't go beyond there. Okay? Swim between the flags was one thing that I thought about most. You swim between the flags, don't stray. God set the boundaries. And then, of course, chapter 3, as we know, is all about transgression of boundaries. Yeah? So let's just look at chapter 3. Look at what happened. So we all know the story, right? Of the transgression of the boundaries. God said, don't touch that one, don't eat from that one, and they do it, okay? And we can see chaos in relationship, conflict in human relationship, and the blame game started to enter humanity because of boundary transgression. Now, this is the story of our life, really. Anyone of you are people helper, most of the people you help who cry on your shoulder, there's some sort of blame game or a chaos or conflict in relationship, yeah? Yes? Okay, so the man said, the woman who you put here with me, she gave it to me, i.e. this is not my fault. The woman said, the serpent deceived me, it's not my fault really. And part of the judgment that God pronounced of the woman have this dynamic in spousal relationship in verse 16. Your desire will be for your husband, so there's unfulfilled desire, and he's going to rule over you. Okay, so relationship change, power manipulation comes into humanity thanks to Genesis chapter 3. So Genesis chapter 3, 1 to 3, God really set the blueprint. He created the world with utmost order. Chapter 1, chapter 2, everything is in order. There's time and season for everything. There's time and season for rest. And in chapter 3, chaos started. So when we think about boundaries, I think we need to think about it from the order, chaos perspective. And so it can be very confronting, going, how chaotic is my house right now? I was thinking about it as I was driving here, going, I might have to improve on that. I was thinking about, there's a verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, it's not on here, when Paul said, in the context of corporate Christian worship, that God is a God of order. So that's why the church service is in clear order. Boundaries have to do with bringing order, because without boundaries there is chaos. All right, now there are 3 sweets to be given away here. I just need you to think using this boundaries lens, okay? Using this boundary setting, boundary breaking lens. Can you give me some Bible example of clear boundaries breaking? Old Testament, New Testament, anybody want a chocolate?
Commandments.
Huh?
Commandments.
Okay, so there was Moses. Moses, God gave the 10 Commandments through Moses, and he went up to the mountain. The 10 Commandments, the first bit was about worship God but nobody else. What happened immediately after that? The golden calf. Boundaries breaking straight away, yeah? Anything else? As I say, I calculate, I can do my yes?
David and Bathsheba.
David and Bathsheba, yep, that's sexual boundary transgression. Yep. I might need somebody to travel chocolates. Next. Anybody else? So any other example? I mean, actually, it's everywhere if you think about it. Just about every book in the Bible, there is boundary transgression. The ones that I can think about was, hang on, where is it? Cain and Abel. God said, be careful, sin is crouching at your door. This is Genesis chapter 4, just one chapter later. Don't give way to your murderous anger. What did he do? He killed his brother, yeah? So Judges is probably the most heartbreaking book about boundaries transgression, yes?
Oh, no, it's going to help distribute the topic.
Oh, thank you. There's not many more, sorry. There's only 2 or 3 more. The book of Judges, what does they start with? In those days, people do whatever they see fit, remember? And you did get to the last few chapters, with the Levites and the concubine and chopping her off, and then, they're trying to kill all the Benjamites. It's chaos, yes? There's no order. There's no respecting of God's boundary. That's what it looks like, the end of the book of Judges. Okay, so next What are boundaries? That's when we go to a lot of the content of the Cloud Townsend book. Now, I actually don't have a copy of the Cloud Townsend book with me because I think we left it in a church library. But there is boundary for kids, boundary for parenting, just the straight boundaries. There is so many of them. Okay, I do have the Beyond Boundary one, just because I happen to have it, which is really talking about people working through the life stage after their boundaries have been transgressed. How are they going to find the way to trust, to go back to a healthy relationship again? But I'm sure you can find those books. So a lot of what we're going to talk about now, which is the basic what is boundaries, is from Cloud and Townsend. So a boundary is just a line. It's like when you buy a house, there's a property line, yeah? Okay? It's a interpersonal property line. It clarifies where your responsibility ends and where is not your responsibility. Okay, you think about your house. Where does your responsibility end? The driveway? The nature strip? What about the next door neighbor's nature strip? Is that your responsibility? Not quite, okay? Boundaries in what we're talking about has to do with identity. A lot of the basic talk about boundaries is to do with who I am, okay? This is me. I have to look after my body because nobody else is going to look after my body. I have to look after my health, my mental health, my core family, because our kids, nobody else, they don't have another parent. It's my responsibility, my kids, my close relationship, my finance. Nobody is going to sort out my debt. I've got to sort out my debt, my assets, and my responsibility at work. Nobody is hired to do your job. Okay, so boundaries, the first thing is to do with identity, and is to do with what I am tasked to be responsible for. And not just be responsible for, but I'm tasked to grow spiritually, intellectually, emotionally. With boundaries, we can grow. So you think about it from young. Those of us who have kids, you teach your young kids to say no to inappropriate touch. Yes? That's boundaries. Private parts of a private. That's boundaries. You teach our teenagers, no mucking around, huh? That's boundaries too. Okay? You teach them, careful with strangers, don't go in the car. There's some other physical boundaries. Now, as some people talk about workforce, as we enter into workforce, we have to learn to say no, even to our bosses, yeah? Yes? Because one of the biggest problems is there will always be work with workplace. There's always work. Okay? So we need to learn to say no to what really is not our responsibility, not in your job description. And with boundaries, we learn to say yes to positive things, good relationship, good friends. We let our guard down with our spouse. Boundaries help, basically it's like a gate. I think Townsend and Clark talk about it's like a gate. You bring it down to let the bad out. But when you believe that's the good in, you up the gate and you let the good in. Okay? Because boundaries basically help us in dealing with interpersonal relationship. When the person growing up learn reasonable boundaries, they largely obey the parents, they do their homework, they obey the teacher, they don't cheat, then as they get a bit older, they turn up on time to go to work, and passes them, they don't speed. And more than that, they control. More important than that is they control the sexual impulse. They stay pure. They negotiate, navigate through life without all these pitfalls that traps us. Yeah. So that's why. Okay. So now next question demands a chocolate. Thank you. From where, as we were young people, from where do we first learn how to draw boundaries? From where do we first learn how to draw boundaries? Where do we first learn how to draw boundaries? Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is, we first learn to draw boundaries from our family of origin, the environment we grow up in. Sorry, no more chocolate for a while. This has to last till the end of
More for me.
Yeah, boundaries. You see, if I don't, I calculated how many I need to last the end of this year. All right. So primarily, as we grow up, we learn from our family of origin. That is my mom and dad and our sibling system. And some of us may be in a 3-generational family situation, but that is where primarily we start learning to set boundaries. And to the degree that the adults in the family, the mums and dads, and maybe the really powerful grandmother, help to make that place a happy place and a healthy place with healthy relationship, is the degree our children, we children, naturally develop a healthy sense of self and healthy boundaries. Now, we live in a broken world. Hands up those of you who can say you really come from a family of origin where your parents make it a happy place, a safe place of healthy boundary and relationship. Please, hands up. Okay, good on you. Okay, you bless God and thank God for your parents, yeah? But majority of us didn't put our hands up, yeah? Why did majority of us, apart from being shy, not put our hands up? It's because dysfunction is so common in our household, and it affects us so much, okay? So, for example, if we come from a workaholic family, parents don't know how to stop work, and they use work to kind of hide their inability or reluctance to relate, we can end up being workaholic ourselves. I've seen it, you know, parents work till, you know, and then the child do the same. And so our spouse and children, when we have our own family, can really feel left out and loved. You know, work is number one. Pastor Sam told us work should be number 4. Yeah, but when you come from that family, you're told making money and work is most important. Now, what about the children of alcoholic parents? Alcoholic parents very often abdicate responsibility, or one parent try to basically rescue the other parent all the time. And so either they grow up without parents, or they grow up basically trying to parent their parents. You know, I hear of people who say, when I was 6, I go, Mama, please wake me up, please wake up to take me to school. You know, that is reverse parenting at worst, okay? And so the world of the alcoholic family is chaotic. And so those people without a good degree of learning can find their life remain chaotic. Okay, and that can really affect us as we grow up and we build our own family. Okay, family when there is conflict all the time, you know, they're doing this all the time, you know, fighting all the time, even one hit out on the other. Some children will just give up on relationship and become a loner, and the others will end up doing the same, repeating the same story, the next generation. And certainly, I know Pastor Mike used to work as a lawyer in domestic violence, helping people with domestic violence. And I think it was him who quoted to me that it was about 10 times a chance. Children who witness their parents having serious domestic violence are 10 times the chance of being perpetrators in their own family, the next generation. So my first point is, our family origin has a lot to do with whether we have healthy boundaries or not. Now, some of you might say, well, tough, I can't change my family of origin. None of us could. I can't change the past. No. But I think what's happened is if we become more aware, then we can guard against making the same mistakes. And the second thing I want to say is when we become more aware, especially those who are younger, we can intentionally look for some more mature people, like some of them sitting on your desk, to reparent us. Okay, so I am speaking of somebody who probably benefit from the uncles and aunties of the OCF era who helped parent me along the way. Okay, so I think it's really important to become aware. Okay, this is where I come from. This is the inheritance I received. I can do something about it. Okay, here is exercise number 2. I should have so exercise number 2 is family tree drawing. How many of you have drawn your own family tree? 1, 2, 3, well, 4, 5. Okay, you guys head, ahead. But one of the most helpful exercises when we talk about healthy living is to draw our family tree and become aware of where we come from. Okay? So, on this paper, I've given you a legend. Circle is female, square is male. Cut off is, those people don't talk to each other. You block them off by 2 strikes. Then some people will use double square or double circle as favorite, and cross is the person who's died. Now, this is an exercise that you're not going to finish today, but I want you to get started. And you can only do one side of family tree at a time because, we've got both sides of family tree. And once you draw your family tree, the questions below are probably the most important question. You kind of sit with it and look at it. Describe the people. Describe what's dad like, what's mum like. Look for patterns. Describe the marriages. What is the quality of the marriages we see here? Describe how do they argue. Some of you might come from families where you never see mum and dad argue. There's some of you who every day see your mum and dad argue. Okay? And figure out about family stories, family secrets, any major family trauma. And when you do that, ultimately the question is, God, this is the family you've given me. What do you want me to do now that you made me aware of my family? All right, so I do want you to get started now. You get about 4 minutes, I think. Why do you think as Christians, and I think Cassie can answer. Cassie, is that right? Yeah, can answer this one. Why do you think we Christians should bother with learning or relearning proper boundaries? Why should we bother? I mean, what do you think? There's no right or wrong answer here. That's why there are 3 suites. Why do you think we need to bother with boundaries? Anybody? Please, there's chocolate. Pastor Sam. Chocolate for you.
I think if you don't keep good boundaries in one part of your life, it easily spills over into the other part.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so it spills over to the other part of life, and then what happened?
Well, for example, if I'm not good with money and I'm corrupt with my money, it's highly likely I'm going to be corrupt sexually.
Right, okay.
And then, ruins your reputation.
Yeah, so it either costs you a lot of unhappiness or you cause somebody else a lot of unhappiness. Okay, so why do we bother with boundaries? One of the things is because we can see a lot of unhappiness. So as I was writing this talk, I had 2 examples on that. So you got some chocolate and direction. So one of my recent patients was from a broken family background when her mother and stepdad were both alcoholics and her stepdad was violent. And she told me as a firstborn in a family, and I can draw it, she effectively raised all the other siblings, the younger siblings, because her parents were alcoholic and one was violent. And she herself become a single mother, and she told me she's exhausted all the time. She feels so guilty, she's neglecting housework, but she said, I don't understand this. When I heard that a friend's daughter was going to school camp, I just had to go and help her pack the perfect school school camp bag. And so she just took over the whole lot, get completely exhausted. And she couldn't tell me why. She knew this was not quite right. You know, and then of course she doesn't have enough energy to clean her own house or look after her own daughter. By the end of that time I have with her, she tells me she quarreled with the neighbor, you know, the relationship with her parents is terrible. And so why do we deal with boundaries? Because when we don't have a clear sense of boundaries, there's often a lot of unhappiness coming out of chaos. So that's first answer. Second, chocolate please. Why do we care about boundaries? Any other idea? Yes?
So that we don't get hurt ourselves.
So that you don't get hurt yourself. So defensive boundaries protect us from getting hurt. Okay, particularly defensive boundaries, okay? You know, ranging from telling your kids you're not getting in some stranger's car. That's going to protect them from getting hurt, yeah? Okay, why else? As Christian, I'm going to add, as Christian, why else do we concern ourselves with boundaries? Yes?
So life is a marathon, so we need to set boundaries, pace ourselves.
Okay, so I don't really want to burn out and run out energy, because then I ain't going to, you know, I run out, I get depressed, then I might even lose my faith. That ain't going to be a very good picture. What else? That's probably enough chocolate. We'll stop there. Thank you. Last one. Now, I would put to you there's one more reason. Now, the reason is very simple. God is a God of order. God is a God of boundaries. And we all want to be like God. We want to be Christ-like, right? Jesus is God, is a man of order. He set clear boundaries. We'll look at it later. So, since we want to follow Christ, clear boundaries is part of our brief. Okay? So I hope you're persuaded that we've got to attend to boundaries. Okay, I've got another real life example here. Recently, I reconnected with a friend that I haven't seen for 20 years. She was my neighbor when I was still single, 20 years ago. We were neighbors and we both loved Jesus, and that's how we become friends. Now, you know what I'm talking about, yeah? You probably have those friendships here. In my recent visit with her, only then I realized she came from a dysfunctional family. Her father was an alcoholic, her mother was an enabler, as in, you know, always trying to keep everything running while her father got drink off the whole family asset. Now my friend is my age, early 50s. She is still, after 20 years, struggling to let go of the same relationship. She knows won't go anywhere. She still struggles with her finances. She still struggles with food, and so with managing her weight. Now she loves Jesus. I mean, here we were, we catch up, we talk about our love for Jesus, our commitment to Jesus doesn't change. But there are all these problems in her life because nobody had ever said to her, hey, you've got to do some learning on boundaries. Just because in your family of origin, everything is chaotic, doesn't mean that this pattern needs to continue on. You've got to learn to say no to people that you need to say no to. You know, you've got to make decisions, but she can't. So that's, I left that gathering very sad, because when we live on this earth, we want to live happy lives. We don't want to be struggling till we are 79, still having quarrel with our spouses, or, you know, having unresolved problem with our children or grandchildren. Yeah? Yes? We want to live happy lives. And if we don't do boundaries work, you know, that, yeah, okay, I'm not saying just because you grow and mature, it guarantees you your life is going to be, you know, free of trouble. What I'm saying is there's a whole lot of misery that we have as human beings that we basically take on for ourselves. You know, it's we who contributed to it because we haven't grown through the things we need to grow through in boundaries. Okay, last week on this section, easiest question. Maybe the youngest or those who think they're the youngest can answer this question first for me. Or the youngest in Melbourne. Who is the youngest in Melbourne here? Who is just somebody was here only 3 weeks or something? You can try answering this question. What is the shortest but most important word in the dictionary for boundary setting? Somewhere there? Is that right? Somebody who has somebody was here 3 weeks only, is that right? Somebody left? Yeah. Anybody like that able to answer this question? What is the most important boundary setting word in the dictionary? Yes? That's right, chocolate for you. Ooh, yeah. So one of my favorite saying goes like this: your yes has no meaning until you are able to say no. I'm going to repeat: your yes has no meaning until you have the freedom to say no. Now, can you say no?
Yes.
Because if you can't say no, then your yes have no meaning. You can't say yes, I don't really want to say yes, but I got to say yes anyway because I can't say no. How many of you have been here? I still remember somebody asked me to go and, some of you here might know that person. Somebody asked me to drive about 45 minutes to go for dinner or lunch or whatever. I'm going, oh, I don't really want to do this on a Saturday. And then I thought, oh, I'm really, really guilty, you know. And then I remember, I'm doing this work for boundaries. My yes has no meaning if I cannot freely say no. I mean, I'm not saying say no rudely. I say no nicely. I'm so sorry, but I really can't do this. Okay? Because if not, you're just always doing what you don't really want to do. Yes? Now, the reverse is also true. When you say yes to something, you automatically say no to something else. Today, you say yes to coming here. You are saying no right now to going to the gym, hang out with a friend, having an afternoon nap, or everything else in between, yes? So saying yes and saying no, are really, really, critical things. And so I think the challenge is, do I really have the freedom to say no? Do I give myself the permission to say no? Or more importantly, who is it that you can never say no to? I remember somebody telling me in church, I can never say no to my mother. Or I can never say no to my mother-in-law. Or maybe I can never say no to my wife. Anybody here admit to that? Okay, question here? Any question? Yes?
I think, what do you think about saying, before you can say no or yes, sometimes you need to quickly stop yourself to say stop. And then maybe rethink about it, how you would put no in a nicer way. Or maybe a definite yes, and you will be happy to go along with yes.
Absolutely. So my favorite line is, can I think about this and get back to you? Please give me a few days to just look at my diary and pray about this. I'm really not sure, But, we all don't want to say no because we are afraid to hurt people's feelings. Isn't that true? Yeah. But you're absolutely right. You kind of then have to find a way to say it nicely. So recently I had to say no, and I thought, oh, did I say it nice enough to not hurt feelings? The truth is, when you say no, it is always possible some feelings are going to be hurt, yeah? But then, if you have to say yes just because you're afraid to hurt somebody else's feelings, all right, now, any other question? No? Okay, we're going to change tack. I'm going to talk about something possibly slightly harder. Somebody mentioned about it earlier. So John Townsend talked about two types of boundaries. We talked about just now defining boundaries. Boundaries that define who we are. This is who I am. This is where I am. My responsibility ends. That's defining boundaries. Then there is protective boundaries. Okay? Or for the other way to say it is defensive boundaries. So remember, I say boundaries is a bit like gates, okay? I think you and I have similar values, you and I will get along, so I let the gate out and we'll be friends, okay? That is really got a lot to do with defining boundaries. Boundaries that define my values and your values. But then when we can be in situations when we actually need to bring the gate down and practice defensive or protective boundaries. Pastor Sam talked about that earlier with marital conflict, you know, and defensive boundaries, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it's basically saying, no, you cannot go any further. Sorry, I've got the wrong section. No, last slide, please. No, not, where did I, last one, please. I forgot about this. No.
Go back.
Go back. There. Okay, sorry, I forgot about this. Completely forgot about it. Okay, so defensive boundary basically say, no, you cannot go further. Now, this is really important when you're dealing with people who have no sense of boundaries, or who test your boundaries all the time, including all our beloved kids. They test our boundaries all the time. Or who just normally think they've got the right to transgress anybody's boundaries. There's people around like that. You might have met some of them. Okay? Now, in this case, when you are with people who have no sense of boundaries or just think they've got the right to walk through you, that's when setting boundaries, defensive boundaries, become really, really important. No, you cannot go any further. Now, this of course is the hardest in spousal conflicts. But if the other party has no sense of boundary, you've got to be able to say, no, I'm changing the lock. You're not staying here. Or I'm moving out and I'm changing my phone. You're not getting my phone number. Or no, you can't be in the same room with me. Okay? Or no, certainly with the gambling addicts, you got to say, I'm changing the password and you're not going to have access to this money just because I'm married to you. No, you're not getting access. Now, sometimes people think they're feeling they're so mean, yeah? But the truth is they are just being sensible when they are facing this sort of situation. So in the church setting, I don't know when the last time somebody may say, if you can't control your tongue and keep hurting everybody else in the life group, you're not welcome. Or in the church, you're not welcome. In the family setting, it could be with a teenage kid. If I found you one more time with drugs, you're out. You're not staying here. You're trying to set boundaries. So the question I have for you is, don't you think that's mean? How many of you think doing this sort of thing is mean? Yeah? Yeah? This is where we find it very difficult to set boundaries, because you think, oh, we're supposed to love. Isn't that mean? Now, how many of you think that's not mean? All those things are, okay? You don't think that's mean. Now, I think the Bible is on the side of Pastor Sam. Why? You think about it. Genesis 2, God said to Adam and Eve, you are to do this. This is your boundaries. If you stay out of boundary, you will die. Now, have you thought about it? Is God very mean that in Genesis chapter 3, when Adam and Eve broke the boundaries, God actually gone and prescribed the punishment he said he was going to be. Adam and Eve, death come to Adam and Eve, yeah? So it's, I just want to debunk this, but you're being mean, okay? Because why did God do that? Why did God chase Adam and Eve out? God chased Adam and Eve out of the garden as he said he would, because he valued himself. He valued his values. He valued holiness. He valued that those he's in relationship with are obedient to him. Okay, so I want to get it into our brain that it is not mean sticking to your boundaries, because you deserve the dignity of not having a boundary transgressor walking all over you. Now, at this moment, I'm just going to say, if that was you when I talk about the boundary transgressor, if you've got somebody like that in your house, your household right now, your life situation is probably, you're probably feeling some pain right now. And I would say, that it's important to talk to someone. You've got your pastors, your pastoral workers and everybody here, or talk to me afterwards, because this is a very difficult place that you're in if you're forever having to put that fence up and thinking, am I just being too mean? All right, now, boundaries and power imbalance. This is the last concept I think that we're going to go to before we do something else. Sorry, this is very, very noisy a slide, but just ignore it for the moment. Boundaries and power imbalance. The basic one is the more power imbalance is between two parties, the more we really need to define boundaries in order to protect the less powerful one. Now, we all know that with church, with kids' church, isn't it? Why do we have to have a child safe and get everybody trained? Because we want to protect the most vulnerable ones, yes? Yeah, okay? But this should happen in every single space that we live in. So I'm a GP, so there are very clearly defined boundaries in the doctor-patient relationship. I was just looking at the Medical Republic article the other day, and there's this doctor saying, set out your boundaries and stand by them. It's fine to have expectation of your patients, or they have expectation of yours. Just spell it out. And once you set your boundaries, then you say, well, at least occasionally, you can make an exception of it. So, as a GP, you know all my boundaries. So you should be turning up on time. If you see me, I should be on time too and not run too late. You know, there is a financial aspect to it. There's a confidentiality aspect to it. There's the I need to be in good faith. There's the you must not lie to me what your symptoms are. You know, all those sort of boundaries set because the relationship is not equal. Now, most of us have an employer, yeah? So in the employer-employee relationship, again, it's not equal. So it's defined, yeah? You got a job description, how many hours, you got to do your part, they got to do their part, they should give you a safe environment, they need to remunerate you properly, yeah? So those are power imbalance situation. Now, what about the relationship between friends? What about friends? So what about friends? In your life, think about your friendships. Janet?
Maybe the friend with better boundaries is more powerful than the one who doesn't have better boundaries. And sometimes the older friend might be more powerful.
Okay, so you are talking about a friendship that is not equal. I'm just talking about, what about friends? You are an 18-year-old, you know, you all look like 18 to me. You're 18 and, you know, that person's 19, you share a flat, you know, or you go to youth group together, that sort of friendship. What about that sort of friendship? Where are the boundaries? Yes?
Some people have got very forceful personality. Real fighting.
Uh-huh. Now, there is no contract between you two, isn't it? So, unfortunately, because friends are supposed to be relatively equal relationship, there's no spoken boundaries, you know. And so, you know, you're going to have to draw the boundaries if somebody is very forceful and defend yourself, yeah? Like, I really don't like the way you're speaking to me, yeah? So now, what about family? What about family relationships? Now we talk about, obviously there are relationships in a family where there's power imbalance, like I'm the mum, Annabelle is the 11-year-old child. Now that is a major power imbalance between there, right? So, you know, but what about general family relationships? Who is the most powerful in your family? Who's the most powerful in your family? We're talking about power imbalance. In your family system, I can tell you in my mother's family, he is the most powerful man. Okay, my grandfather. Okay, he holds all the power in this family system. Interestingly, for the next generation, my number one auntie is the most powerful because she's the oldest. That's not like a common thing. So basically, with family relationship, things are not so clear. How many of you live in a family when, okay, you don't have to raise your hand just because you're embarrassed. But how many of you live in a family when actually the father is most powerful. No? No? Poor fathers. Okay. How many of you live in a family when your mum is actually the neck that turns the head and everything's is designed by them? Some of you are, yeah. Okay. Now, how many of you live in a family when actually, if you think about it, certain child is most powerful? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? You know, the 3-year-old that plays tantrum all the time is a pretty powerful person. So in family situation, the power gradient is not very clear. Now that leads me to the next point, which is in the church-family relationship, the power balance, the power relationship is also not very clear. Yeah. Who is the most powerful in each room changes, okay? Just because Pastor Sam is the senior pastor doesn't automatically mean he is actually the most powerful person. No, most time, but and more importantly, every one of you in this room come to a relationship with Pastor Sam, the senior pastor, with different expectation of power relationship. Is he the father figure? Is he the wise counselor? Or is he the employee? Okay, these are very, people come into relationship with different expectations. And worse, we bring our family, way that family functions into our church life. So if, and that's not the case, if my grandfather was going to turn up in this church, he'd probably think he has got the right to call the shots, because he called the shots in our family system. Does it make sense? And I'm sure there are people, Pastor Sam, that you work with in this church that you're thinking, hey, you're a bit dominant here, but that's how they are, you know, they automatically assume that position because they don't even think about how they do the relationships. Does it make sense? And so it can be very difficult, relationships in church. Relationship in church and relationship in family probably are most confusing. It's not like the doctor-patient relationship or the employer-employee relationship, the student-lecturer relationship, you know, they're pretty prescribed. Whereas we've got to navigate our way through this. Now, there's one more type of relationship that is complex in terms of setting boundaries, and that's dual relationships. That's when we need to go for chocolate. What's a dual relationship? Give me an example of a dual relationship. Yes?
If you are working for someone, but then you also know that person personally, like your
Correct.
friends.
Chocolate for you. Thank you. Okay, so dual relationships are tricky. So whether it is he's my boss, but we play tennis together, and I beat him. Okay. That's a bit tricky. Okay. Like when we went Point Cook, our cell group had an employee, had Mike, who is senior pastor, had an employee and the chairman of the board, all in one cell group. Now that is quite tricky, isn't it? Because everybody's going to take off their hat of what they are wearing and come with the hat of we are fellow Christian in a cell group. Okay? So the way to manage dual relationship is to be clear what hat you're wearing. So for me, in Point Cook, I am usually very often the pastor. I am very often also the pastoral counselor, because I do a lot of counseling at church. Then for quite a few people, I also happen to be their GP. It is a bit tricky. So you will hear me, and whenever it is tricky, you've got to label it. I think the way to deal with boundaries when there's confusion is to voice it out. Now, in this space, we are fellow Christians. Or in this space, I'm not your doctor. In this space, I am just your pastor. Or I'm not going to be able to counsel you all the time here, you know, because this is not the right environment. So again, you need to be able to say not. You've got to be able to say no to define what you're going to, this interaction, us. Okay, am I making sense thus far?
Yes.
Okay, hands up, I've lost you. Anybody I've lost you completely? Hands, put your hands up. No? Any question? Now you can put your hands up. Yes?
If let's say the third party has voiced out their boundary,
then how does that play if that person, the third party, comes in and actually say the boundary?
Okay, so we're talking about triangulation here. The question is, if say I'm your GP and there's a third party and we're in a church setting, yeah. So I think one of the first thing is it's really upon the person who is more powerful, like in the doctor-patient relationship, to draw the boundaries. In church, very frequently I would say, I'm sorry, I cannot deal with this problem properly here. Can you see me back in the clinic? Or I would say, I'm sorry, there's not enough privacy, okay, for this situation. Now, if I have to deal with something in the church setting and that person want to get involved, I will usually say, now, you're the person that this problem is involved. You have to tell me whether you want this person to come in as your supporter. It's up to you to stay a good boundary to say no. Does it make sense? Okay? And I can say that routinely, if I've got a 20-year-old coming into my room and their best friend, 22-year-old, turned up, I would say, now, are you sure you want this person in? And then I'll turn to that person and say, do you understand that there might be sensitive things to talk about in this room? And to protect your friend, you need to understand what she tells you not to tell other people, you don't tell other people. So confidentiality is part of setting safe boundaries. And that, I'm sure, is something that happens in a church. The worst thing you want is to go to your pastor and disclose something and then he knows about it, yeah? So it's also needing to label it very clearly. This conversation is confidential. So I usually will ask, okay, very often I'll ask, when I talk to somebody, I'll say, is it okay if I talk to Pastor Mike? Because he's the senior pastor, I'm not, okay? I seek permission to do that, because the more we can label things, the less trouble. Now, let me tell you, now that I think about it, there's one place that we really get into a lot of trouble with: prayer meetings. Oh dear God, please bless B and C or D, you know, they had an abortion. It's like, for goodness sake, you know. You know, people kind of think I'm just praying my heart out. I would say, everybody who's going to pray, love prayer meeting, please learn to speak in such a way that maintain people's confidentiality. I still remember the time when I figured out somebody had an unplanned pregnancy or something like that through a prayer meeting, and I thought, I wonder how that person felt when the news just come through, because somebody was not tight with that boundary. All right, you with me? And there was another question in the front. Anybody else? There was a question somewhere here. No? No more question? I can't see. Okay, keep going.
Hi. I think we talked about how God is a God of clear boundaries. Oh, thank you.
You talked about how God is like a God of clear boundaries, but I think a lot of times for me, like, God's also a sacrificial God, and that's when the boundaries are crossed a bit, because I want to be sacrificial with my time. So how do we navigate?
Yeah, that is a great question. If my timing permit, I will get to that point very soon, okay? I'll try to remember to flag you at that point. Any other question? No. No, I hope, because I suddenly realized I'm out of time. So let's just stick to the next thing. Yep. Yep.
Is it possible to overextend the boundary and then say no to too many things?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so remember, boundaries are like gate, okay? So if I have been hurt very badly, I'll probably put all the gates down and be so scared to trust again, okay? But that is a journey we got to go through. I mean, we are created for relationship, but relationship can hurt us very badly. So, you know, if we were aware that we're in that situation, we've got to, like this book talk about, finding courage to trust again in relationship. That's that book for people who've been hurt very badly. Okay, I am about 20 minutes behind time. So let's just move on. Next.
Just go longer.
Huh?
Just go longer.
Right, just 20 minutes before my time, which I've got 15 minutes left. Okay, now. Pastor Sam put me to this book. I don't know how many of you have read this one. Burnout, a guide to identifying burnout and pathway to recovery. Now, when we do not do self-care well, when we keep on saying yes when we should say no, sooner or later we get to that place when there's 1 out of 10 in our tank. That's when we burn out. A book like this is helpful. The other book I found very helpful, but I know only Janet and Sam probably read, is Going the Distance, How to Stay Fit for a Lifetime Ministry. We've read this ever since the early part of our ministry, find it very helpful. There was also a chapter on burnout. Now, we are not going to have time to do this questionnaire, but I'll give it to you. But if you want to know whether you're burnout, there's the Sydney Burnout Measurement Questionnaire. Okay? And that's what that is. That is going to be for you to do later. Now, I'm going to then change text slightly. I'm not going to talk about family and dysfunction and everything else now. I'm just talking about human limits. I'm going back to that on the page that you've just done your exercise on. Do you respect your human limits? What's in your spiritual tank? What's in your relationship tank? What's in your physical tank? What's in your emotional tank? Remember, I say it should not be a norm that we are always scoring less than 5 out of 10. And yet I remember doing this exercise with my group of women. I had women who scored 2 out of 10, and I thought, how do you live on if you are living on 2 out of 10? Okay, so this next section is really on acknowledging that we are flesh and blood, and we have limits. None of us is Superman, okay, or Superwoman, okay? I'm just going to want us to go through these texts. Now, most of us will have 1 or 2 tanks we don't do very nicely on. So as we go through the tank, maybe God, we'll ask God for wisdom to write something that you can put into practice this week to fill that tank. Most of us know which tank is really, really low. Okay, I'm going to start with the easiest, which is the physical tank. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 to 20 say, our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. You are not your own. You are bought with a price. So honor God with your spirit. Next slide, please. Next slide, please? Yeah. Okay, so you know all this stuff. What's my diet like? Am I eating too much? Am I eating too much junk? Am I drinking too much alcohol? Am I having too little exercise? How am I dealing with my sexual desire? Am I choosing abstinence in my sexual fantasy as much as actual sex? Young people, when you have a love interest, a boyfriend or girlfriend, do you allow that person cross physical boundaries? When they want to cross more physical boundaries, can you say no? That's a boundary. That's a real important boundary thing. Now then, work. Can I say I can only do that much and rest? Okay. Can I say I'm not Superwoman, so I cannot work this much and do this much and look after my kids and look after the elders in the household properly? So I'm only going to do that much. So some of you know I'm only working 3 days a week now. I used to be for 10 years 2 days a week. I refuse to bring it up because I'm just a human being. Okay, I have my boundary and my limits too. Okay, so rest, Sabbath. Have I honored God in trusting Him and doing Sabbath properly? Sleep. Who is up midnight last night? Confession time. No? Yep, some up midnight last night, okay? Are you having enough sleep? You know that not enough sleep is going to cut a few years off your life. And aging, that's the one I put down. Now that I'm over 50, I put in aging. Am I accepting the increasing human limits as I age? I don't have that much energy. My joints start to ache. Okay, so that's the straightforward bit. Next. Now this is the big one. The relationship tank. This is the big one. We are made to be relational human beings, okay? Apart from God, and I forgot to put God in this, I'm sorry. I'm going to put G-O-D, big sign there. That's the family of origin issues we look at, yeah? But really, a lot of where we are in our relational tank depends on what's happening in our nuclear family, okay? Nuclear family, I mean those we are living with, or I suppose there are times when your kids move out, but they are still actually in reality your nuclear family, okay? And because like it or not, we do relationship for one reason. We do relationships so that we can fill up our tank of love. We feel love, right? We do relationship for the purpose of love. But in all these relationships, if we don't do well, all we get is heartache, yeah? So I'm just going to look at what happened with the nuclear family first. Mainly first, you know, how do we get to a nuclear family? We have a spouse, yeah? We got married. So what happened when we got married? We shift our boundaries. So what boundaries, okay, chocolate time. What boundaries is shift when you get married, okay? Anybody getting married or just got married? Who just got married? No? Okay. Okay. And what boundaries are shifted? What changed in relationship when you got married? Anybody recently married can tell me? No one got married here. Yes?
From me, no, I'm not recently married. I think you shift from me to us.
Okay, you shift from me to us? Yes, maybe. What else? Yeah, I suppose chocolate. Yeah, use it all up. Yeah.
The order, the spouse is more important than the parent.
Okay, okay.
You don't look after your parents, you still look after
Okay,
your
that's
parents.
right. Your kids recently got married. That helps. Okay. Okay. So when you get married, your relationship change. You move out effectively of your primary connection being your family of origin to cling to your spouse. So leave in order to cleave. Okay. Now, what about the spousal relationship itself? Does it mean once you get married, there's no boundaries between the two of you? Yes or no? How many yes? Is there boundaries between spouses?
Yes.
There are boundaries between spouses? Nobody say no? What sort of boundaries? I was about to say Mike's dessert should be my dessert. But look, like it or not, healthy relationship, there is still boundaries between spouse. I'm just going to find my page. There is a togetherness, there is a separation. Now, obviously, in getting married, we remove a lot of boundaries voluntarily. Your money becomes his money. Yeah? Your bedroom becomes his bedroom. You cook in the same household, you live in the same space, yeah? So there is a togetherness, but there is still a separation. You need your own toothbrush, you need your own friends. So one of the problems in spousal relationship is when we think just because we get married, everything's got to be do together. You know, you've got to give each other some space. But then the other side of the problem are those who get into marriage not understanding two shall become one. Or worse, there are those who get into marriage who are not able to leave the family of origin. Maybe they're their mum's favorite son. They cannot cleave with their wife. Somebody is laughing. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay. So now what about parent-children relationship? Sorry, where am I up to? Relationship, you know, how often is a relationship tank drained by parent-children relationship? How many have gone through heartache and think the hardest part of my life is actually the parent-children relationship? Yes? Yeah. Now, I'm not able to talk about this area in a lot of details except 2 points, because that's not the point of this. One point is that whenever possible, the research will say reduce chaos in the family for your children. I'm not saying children do not create chaos. Children are very good at creating chaos. Just give them 10 minutes in your room and you look at the chaos, okay? But basically, whenever possible, the article that comes out of this year talks about quality relationship comes out of, can only happen when there is not so much chaos. If you think about it, God created the world in order. So it's not meant that our world, our family life is like the whirlwind. So if your family world is like the whirlwind, we might need to think about ways to reduce chaos, like getting some routines set up, getting used to those routines. Now, somebody mentioned siblings, favoritism, some earlier. The second research talks about how favoritism is very damaging to children as they grow up, okay? Because favoritism basically put one sibling having a lot of power over the other. The siblings cannot draw healthy boundaries if one has so much more power than the other. Okay, so I do have these two articles with me if anybody wants the original article that I was just having to reading this week. Okay, now the last thing I want to touch about is the in-law relationship that we talk about. Somebody rightly said, no, last slide please. A man leaves their father, mother, quoted this morning in the sermon, and is united to his wife, and two become one flesh. The thing I wanted to focus on is a man has to leave his father and mother. So in family systems, a lot go wrong, particularly with Asian family system, when parents do not release their adult children to go and build intimacy with their spouse. This is a, you know, how some people will say, oh, congratulations getting married, you know, you're going to gain another daughter. No, that's not how it works. Okay? All of you who are going to be parents who have got kids getting married, you will lose them to a certain degree. You must get this right. You don't gain a daughter or gain a son. Okay, you do, but you don't. Okay, in the sense that you've got to let them leave in order to cleave. Okay? And this is particularly a problem I find with mums and sons, particularly if mum becomes single. Okay? So mum becomes widowed, or mum doesn't have good relationship with dad. The son's getting married. Then they couldn't let go. They couldn't let go. Then the son is not free to really have that good relationship with their the wife, and unhappiness perpetrates. There's a few notes here. Okay, so that is done for this point. Next point, how are we going to be timed? We're really doing badly with time. Okay, the emotional tank. Now I'm going to answer that question earlier. So with the emotional tank, I think there's only two things I want to say. One is all of us are wired differently. The extrovert needs people. The introverts need time alone. Okay? Your love language might be time, your spouse got time to spend time with you, or your love language might be service. Please take the garbage out and I'll feel loved. Okay? So don't laugh. That's true. And so basically, the first point is we've got to be aware of how we're wired emotionally. We've got to communicate with our spouse how we're wired emotionally. So do all of you know what your spouse's love language are? You know whether your spouse is an introvert and extrovert. What will upset them to no end? And what will make them feel loved? Because, you know, you don't want to drain their tank. You drain their tank, you drain your tank. Okay, now the next point answer that question there, which was, but aren't we supposed to be Christian? Aren't we supposed to carry each other's burden? Can you see that in Galatians chapter 6 verse 2? Carry each other's burden. In this way you fulfill the law of Christ. Aren't we supposed to be sacrificial? Now, Galatians 6 chapter verse 2 say carry each other's burden. But verse 5 said each should carry their own burden. So there is a balance here. Okay? I think, sorry, I'm just going to skip here. One of the hardest things for those of you sitting here who are people helper, who who spend time with people is to discern, is this a burden that's meant for me? Is it a good thing that I help this person carry this bit of the burden? Or actually, that person needs to learn to just pick it up and do it themselves. That's one of the hardest things. And I think add to it, just like one of my patients I told you about, who decided to go and take over the packing of a friend's daughter's school bags, literally. Sometimes when we grow up with poor boundaries, we have no idea what is ours, what's not ours. And we have no idea what's already on our plate as burdens. And so we take on things because it makes us feel good. I suspect for that woman, it makes her feel good having done something. So she'll think I've achieved something, but actually all she does is do something that's not hers to do. Have I lost you? Or no? Yeah. Okay. So just be careful when you take on somebody else's burden. Am I taking this burden on because I really need to feel needed? I certainly know people who need to feel needed. And then they all get exhausted because they're always helping other people. That's the emotional bit. All right, spiritually, this is the last tag. Now, I'm making the assumption here that most of you, if not all of you in this room, know and love the Lord Jesus. Remember what I shared about my first conversion spot, okay? Because you can't talk about filling the spiritual tank without going to first base. First base is knowing and loving Jesus, okay? Now, if you don't, you stay here thinking, what this woman talking about? Talk about every pastors. They will be more than willing to introduce the Lord Jesus to you, okay? Then obviously for all of us who are Christian, the question is, what are we doing to fill our spiritual tank? So it does come down to the rubber in the road that you hear your pastors talking about. Are you doing your quiet time? Are you giving enough space to Jesus to speak into your life? Are you regularly meeting with your fellow Christians? Are you worshiping? Are you putting into practice what the Bible tells you to do? Or are you grieving the Holy Spirit by doing the exact opposite, like Jonah? God tell him to go here and he goes there. Okay? So that's the spiritual tank. And the other point, the last point I want to make about the spiritual tank is try not to be a spiritual superhero. Romans 12:3 talk about not think of ourselves more highly than we ought, but with sober judgment. I'm just looking at that time. Next slide, please. The last thing I'm saying is one of you have said it, which is all four tanks are interrelated. For example, when I was sick and having a cold, I feel depressed and I don't feel like reading my Bible, so all my tanks go down. Yeah. So one tank going down is going to affect another tank going down. And Pastor Sam talked about how if somebody is ill-disciplined with their money, that's going to bring some stress in some part of life. It kind of can snowball and affect the other. So whether it's the emotional, the relational, the physical, the spiritual tank, they're all interrelated. I'm going to stop here and say, can I have another 8 minutes before, I'm just looking at the time, or you want to do the discussion now? There is a case study here next. Can we go to case study or not? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, next page, case study. The case study I chose for you, next one, is Jesus. Okay, this is when you've got to open your Bible. Maybe I'm going to just assign Matthew, that table, every table have a Bible. If you don't, I've got one here. You go Matthew 4:1-11. So the question is, what boundaries did Jesus set? Okay, this table will be Matthew 4:17 and Mark 1:15. They're very similar. Okay, and then this table will be Mark 1:30-39 And that table will be Matthew 12:38 to 39, and that table will be Luke 23:8-9, and that table will be John 11:3-5 to 6, and the rest of you got off scot-free. Okay, first, I'm not going to read it, but tell me in a gist, this table, what is this about? Matthew chapter 4, verse 1 to 11. What is it about? Jesus being tempted. So what is this about regarding boundaries? What's the big thing Jesus said to the devil? No. Okay, 3 times he said no. You know, Jesus knew he was called to be human, so he stick to human boundaries. He wasn't going to change stone to bread or defy gravity. He wasn't going to succumb to the temptation of power and riches. He said no. Right, next table. Now this is a harder one, I'm sorry. Matthew 4 verse 17 or Mark 1:15. Can somebody read it out?
Do you want me to read
Yes.
it? Oh, Matthew 4:17. From that time, Jesus began to preach, saying, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand.
Yeah, okay, so the Mark text is very similar. Jesus only began his ministry when the time is right. He said the time is near, the kingdom of God is near, the time has come. Okay, so he said he's not in a hurry to race into ministry. Okay, next, Mark 1:30 to 39. Now, this table, Serena's table, Mark 1:30 to 39. What is this story about? Okay,
So
I
there-
would, yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
like healing from the...
So Jesus was healing Peter's mother-in-law. Then what happened was the evening come, verse 32. All the people bring to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town was gathering there, and Jesus healed many of them. Yeah. Then what happened next? Verse 35. What happened next?
He departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed.
Yes. So Jesus went out to a lonely place, and he did his quiet time, and he prayed. Then Peter and the companions said, everybody's looking for you. What did Jesus then say? Verse 38.
Let us go on to the next town, that I may preach there also, and that is why I came out.
This is remarkable. The whole town is looking for you. And he said, actually, it's time to leave. Now, Jesus set the boundaries. He's not, just because there's this needs, you know, all these people are crowding. They're all needing healing. They want to hear from you. You are the most popular. No, it's time to move. Okay, so he set his own schedule. He's very clear about boundaries. Next table, right back there, Matthew chapter 12, verse 38 to 39. What was the story there? What did Jesus say no to?
Pharisees want to see like a sign or something?
Absolutely. So the Pharisees say, Jesus, give me a sign. Jesus say no. Luke 23, 8 to 9. What's the story there?
Lazarus being healed.
Right, yours is the next one. So that table first, sorry. Luke 23, 8 to 9. What was the story there?
I think like Peter saw Jesus and he want to see him so badly, and also like he want him to perform a sign of some sort.
Yes.
But Jesus didn't say anything.
Yes, so Jesus just didn't respond. You know, mate, he's in front of the king, you know. There must be a bit of pressure to perform there. It was not appropriate that he just say no to giving Harold the sign. He can say no to interacting. Now, Janet, your story, John 11. What happened there in John 11?
Lazarus.
Yeah, this is the remarkable story of Lazarus. This is Jesus' friend. Yeah. Two of his closest friends say, my brother is ill, implying, please come quickly. What did Jesus do?
He waited
2 days. He was not even friend's request. He walked his own timetable. Okay, so the question I suppose for us is, what can we learn from Jesus? in what situation in your life is it hard to draw a boundary, set a limit, take a rest? Say no. I'm going to skip the next slide and to the next one. This verse we use a lot in offerings. I think it applies to giving of our time and energy. When we give time and energy to people, especially you who are people helper, it should be not reluctantly or under compulsion. And I think this is where I'll stop. Yeah? Yeah.